Cracker is an American alternative rock band led by singer David Lowery and guitarist Johnny Hickman. The band is best known for its gold-selling 1993 album, Kerosene Hat, which includes the hit songs Low and Euro Trash Girl. Lowery and Hickman formed the band in 1991, releasing the album Cracker the following year on Virgin Records. The band has been touring ever since, releasing 10 studio albums and several compilations, collaborations, solo projects and live albums. The band's newest studio album, Berkeley to Bakersfield, was released December 9, 2014 on 429 Records. Cracker mix influences and sounds from rock, punk, post-grunge, psychedelia, country, blues and folk. History 1990s. Shortly after Lowery's former group Camper Van Beethoven disbanded in 1990, he began demoing material along with boyhood friend, guitarist Johnny Hickman. After moving from Redlands, California to Richmond, Virginia, Lowery and Hickman recorded a demo tape, later nicknamed Big Dirty Yellow Demos by the group's fans, which included early versions of songs that appeared on later albums. They eventually chose the name Cracker and teamed up with fellow Redlands bass guitarist Davey Faragher. A brief tour with Virginia drummer Greg Weatherford followed. By 1991, the newly formed band had signed a recording contract with Virgin Records and enlisted the help of several drummers-percussionists, issuing its first album, Cracker, in 1992. From the album came radio hit Teen Angst, which peaked at number 1 on Modern Rock Tracks, and a second single entitled Happy Birthday to Me. A year later, Cracker issued its best-selling album, Kerosene Hat. The album included hit singles Low and Get Off This, as well as a cover of the Grateful Dead's Loser. The album sold almost 500,000 copies that year and eventually almost reached platinum status. Urbano performed on Kerosene Hat and toured with Cracker before leaving the band, along with Faragher. After a short spell with Bruce Hughes, Lowery and Hickman added Bob Roop, formerly of the Silos, as bass guitarist and Charlie Quintana on drums. In 1993, Cracker contributed the song Good Times Bad Times to the Encomium tribute album to Led Zeppelin. 3 years later, The Golden Age was released, with I Hate My Generation as the lead single. However, the music scene was shifting away from guitar-driven alternative rock, and although critically acclaimed, the album sold only moderately. Following the long-term additions of drummer Frank Funero and keyboard player Kenny Margulies, the band tried again in 1998 with Gentleman's Blues, with The Good Life as the lead single. Although the album received only a lukewarm critical response, it solidified an ever-growing and devout following both in the United States and Europe who referred to themselves as Crumbs. Perhaps the highlight of the 1990s was 1995 when the track Whole Lotta Trouble co-written by Johnny Hickman and Chris Leroy was used in the film Empire Records. In this same year the song Shake Some Action was used in the teen romantic comedy Clueless. Camper Van Beethoven unexpectedly reformed in 1999 and released the critically acclaimed New Roman Times. During this time, Hickman released a first solo recording, Homage, which received Voice's Choice accolades in The Village Voice by the rock critic Robert Christgau and a positive review in Blender magazine. Since then, Lowery has performed in both bands. 2000s A compilation album called Garage Doll was released in 2000, with one disc composed of greatest hits and 3 new songs, and another of outtakes, soundtrack contributions, demos and other obscurities. Roop departed in January 2000 and was replaced by bass guitarist Brandy Wood. In 2002, the band released its next studio album, Forever, which, once again, was met with limited commercial and critical success. The group left Virgin in 2003 with the independent release Countrysides, composed of 8 country and western covers and 1 new, original song. A collaboration with the bluegrass band Leftover Summon, O Cracker, Where Art Thou? Contain bluegrass versions of many Lowery and Hickman compositions. In 2005, Cracker and Camper Van Beethoven started an annual 3-night camp out at Pappy and Harriet's Pioneertown Palace in Pioneertown, California, close to where Lowery and Hickman met, in which they and several other bands perform, including sets by Cracker and Camper band members performing their own music. Previous year's guests have included Roger Clyne, John Doe, Necco Case, Ike Riley, Ryan Bingham, Vermilion Lies, Jason Molina and Magnolia Electric Company, Built to Spill, Brandtjuk and the Brothers, Clem Snide, Graham Rabbit and the Bell Rays. With Camper Van Beethoven bass guitarist Victor Kromenascher replacing Wood, the band released the studio album Greenland on June 6, 2006, and continued to tour extensively. After the departures of Margulis and Kromenascher, the band's lineup stabilized in 2007 around Hickman, Lowery, Funero and new bass guitarist Almeida, who had played with Roxy Music. Cracker released a new studio album entitled Sunrise in the Land of Milk and Honey to positive reviews on May 5, 2009. It was the band's first chart on the Billboard 200 in more than a decade, after having sold more than 3,000 copies in a week. This was in part due to the AAA chart success of the album's lead single, Turn On, Tune In, Drop Out With Me, which was used in the television show Californication. 2010s. In January 2011, Lowery released his first solo album, The Palace Guards, on 429 Records. In March, Cracker announced Camp Out East, the East Coast counterpart to their Camp Out Festival, to be held in Crozet, Virginia. The first Camp Out East was held at Misty Mountain Camp Resort and was co-hosted by Sons of Bill. The second Camp Out East took place in Buena Vista, Virginia at Glen Murray Park on June 1, 2012. Johnny Hickman released his second solo album, Tilting, in July 2012. Cracker's Facebook page mentioned on October 10, 2011, that the band would be working on a new album in 2012. In July 2014, the band announced that it was off to mix its new record. The band's song Low appeared in the 2012 film The Perks of Being a Wallflower and again in The Wolverine and an episode of Hindsight. Drummer Frank Funero was unable to tour due to an injury to his arm that sidelined him for all of 2014. In July 2014, a revival of the Kerosene Hat era lineup toured China. David Lowery and Johnny Hickman were joined on the tour by original bassist Davey Faragher and former drummer Michael Urbano. Faragher and Urbano also joined the band in recording roughly half of the double album Berkeley to Bakersfield. The other half was recorded with an entirely new lineup that also became the current touring lineup. The album was released on December 9, 2014 with Waited My Whole Life released as a single. Band members. Current members David Lowery vocals, guitar, Johnny Hickman lead guitar, vocals, Brian Howard, bass guitar, Coco Owens, drums, Thea Serrano, keyboards, vocals, Matt Pistol Stoessel pedal steel guitar. Former members Davey Faragher bass guitar, vocals, Phil Jones drums, percussion, Michael Urbano drums, Bruce Hughes bass guitar, David Lowery drums, Joey Peters drums, Johnny Hott drums, Bob Ruper bass guitar, vocals, Charlie Quintana drums, Kenny Margulis keyboards, accordion, Brandy Wood bass guitar, vocals, Victor Kromenascher bass guitar, vocals, Frank Funero drums, Salmeida bass guitar. Timeline. Discography, studio albums, Cracker, Kerosene Hat, The Golden Age, Gentleman's Blues, Forever, Countrysides, Greenland, Sunrise in the Land of Milk and Honey, Berkeley to Bakersfield, compilation and live albums, Bob's Car, Garage Dog, Hello, Cleveland. Live from the Metro, Oh Cracker Where Art Thou? Berlin, singles and EPs, Teen Angst, Tucson, Low, Get Off This, Euro Trash Girl, I Hate My Generation, Nothing to Believe In, The Good Life, The World Is Mine, Shine, Merry Christmas, Emily, Something You Ain't Got, Gimme One More Chance, Everybody Gets One for Free, Turn On Tune In Drop Out With Me, Waited My Whole Life, Almond Grove, Charting Songs, Various Artist Compilations, The Virgin Years with Camper Van Beethoven, Garage. 2-disc Greatest Hits Album and Oddities Collection, Hello, Cleveland. Live at the Metro, Get On With It, The Best of Cracker Virgin Records Greatest Hits Collection, Greatest Hits Radio Band Authorized Re-Recordings of Major Hits, Tribute Albums, If I Were a Carpenter Rainy Days and Mondays, Encomium, a tribute to Led Zeppelin Good Times Bad Times, I Saw, A Stab at the Residents Blue Rosebuds, Sweet Relief 2, Gravity of the Situation Withering, Burning London, The Clash Tribute White Riot, This Is Where I Belong, The Songs of Ray Davies and the Kings Victoria. References. External links, official website, Cracker interview July 2009, Live Daily, interview, Pop Girls, interview, NY Rock, interview.